Good morning. I had everything all ready to start, then I hit the wrong button. How about that? So I had to start over. But it works. So today we continue looking at Acts 7. We look at verses 22 through 43. And Stephen is being questioned by the Pharisees. But in this, actually what we're reading, he's responding to the questions of the Pharisees. And he's reminding them about how God chose the Israelite people, Abraham, Moses, and he's talking now about Moses and all of what Moses went through in being chosen by God to lead the people. So verse 22 begins our reading today. So Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in words and deeds. And so Moses, we know, had been raised by Pharaoh's daughter. He's now 40 years old. And one day as he's out, Stephen is reminding these religious leaders of what went on. And so he's reminding us too that Moses went out and to visit his relatives, the Israelites. And he saw one of them being wronged by an Egyptian, being beaten or whatever, unfairly. And Moses took matters into his own hands, and in his dealing with that Egyptian, he kills the Egyptian. And he's, he thinks that his fellow Israelites will understand why he did that God was rescuing them through him. These Israelites, did they know who Moses was really? Did they know that he was an Israelite raised by this Pharaoh's daughter? I don't know that for sure, but they didn't know what was going on. And so the next day, when Moses comes and sees two Israelites arguing and fighting with each other, he intervenes. And one of them says, "What are you going to do? Kill us like you killed that Egyptian?" So Moses, thinking that, he had done a good deed for them, finds out that he still isn't, he's not trusted by them. They don't know what his motives are. And I understand that. So Moses he's afraid, kind of for his own life, because, these Israelites know that he killed this Egyptian. And word could get out that he killed this Egyptian, and because he is an Israelite, even though he was raised by an Egyptian, as an Egyptian, he was afraid for his life, so he flees. He's gone. He's 40 years old, and it says he becomes an alien in the land of Midian. And now when 40 years have passed, so now Moses is 80 years old, an angel appears to him in the wilderness at Mount Sinai in the flame of a burning bush. And, we don't hear the whole story here from Stephen, but we know of the story of Moses and the burning bush from in the Old Testament readings. And how this Moses was looking, and this bush, even though it was burning, was not being consumed. So he goes closer, and the voice of the Lord comes. "I am the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob." And it says Moses began to tremble. This is, Stephen reminding these Israelite leaders of the story of Moses and how Moses was chosen, and how God said to him, "Take your sandals off, because where you are standing is holy." And then, Moses comes to the Israelite people again and says to them, "God has chosen me to lead you out of Israel." And they still don't trust this Moses. And Moses goes to Pharaoh, and says, "God has said, let my people go." And of course, Pharaoh doesn't want to lose all of these Israelite slaves. We know that because they're the ones doing all the work. And so through the course of the plagues, the Israelites' workload gets worse. And these plagues, these 10 plagues that we had read about in the Old Testament, that we are aware of, especially the last one, the 10th one, the Passover of the Israelites' homes and the killing of the firstborn of the Egyptians. we know that that was a horrible, horrible thing. And, but yet the people, you know, the people knew the scriptures, and they knew, you know, like Stephen reminds them in verse 37, this is the Moses whom said to the Israelites, God will raise up a prophet for you from your own people, as he raised me up, you know. And so the Israelite people do understand that Moses is one of them. And the promise from Moses, from God through Moses, is that there will be a Savior, you know, one who will, a prophet will come from his own people. He is the one who in the congregation, the wilderness of the angels spoke, and all of this, you know. And then a reminder, our ancestors didn't listen to Moses. They didn't listen to God. And so as they were being led out of captivity, you know, they had been freed and they were beginning their wandering in the wilderness. And as Moses went up on the mountain, it says their hearts turned back to Egypt. And these people said to Aaron, let us make a god, because we don't know what happened to this Moses guy. And Stephen is using this illustration of Moses being sent as a prophet, as a leader for the people, as a deliverer, and the people's rejection of Moses, the people's rejection of God. And we don't read all of this story today. We end before we get anywhere close to that. But you know, Stephen reminds them at that time they made this calf, offered a sacrifice to their idol, and reveled in the works of their hands. And then verse 42, but God turned away from them and handed them over to the worship the host of heaven, you know. And then, you know, with the quotation from the prophets that we end our reading with today of Stephen. So Stephen knows the scriptures. He knows what's going on, and he's reminding the people that just as these ancestors of yours rejected God, rejected Moses, acted on their own, couldn't put their trust in God. I mean, Moses was up on the mountain, we know, for an extended period of time. And these people were there. Aaron was, you know, Aaron was the spokesperson because Moses didn't speak very well, it says in the Bible, but they felt lost. They didn't know what to do. And, you know, thinking about it, they had been slaves for 400 years. They did not know how to be a free people. They did not know how to take care of themselves or to make decisions for themselves. They were so used to being told this and this and this, and you know, this was their work, and that's what they knew. And so, you know, even after the time when they go through the promised land or get to the promised land, they aren't really sure how to take care of the land and do all of that stuff. But, you know, we're still in the story of Stephen, talking to these religious leaders, reminding them of how God chose his people, how God chose Moses to lead the people, and reminding them that Moses had told the people of God's promise of another prophet, a great prophet, a Savior, a Messiah. And, you know, Stephen is convinced, rightly so, that Jesus is this Messiah.